Hope you'll bear with my pessimistic self for a little bit longer this afternoon. I was complimented earlier by the very encouraging words of, "That was a very nice attempt this morning." Very optimistic compliment that was. Won't say who, but anyway, we may have to have a whole quarter-long study on optimism, maybe, just to hash it out. Get on the same page here of what...
Well, you don't want to get carried away.
That's true. I can get on board with that. So, this afternoon, we're looking at a couple of people, starting with Micah, and then we'll look at Michal, and I anticipate Michal, not the archangel Michael, but the other one without the E, the girl Michal, the woman, I should say. I suspect we might have a little more to say about her. So I'll try my best to allot an appropriate amount of time for that. But Micah was a prophet from Moresheth Gath, or Moresheth at least, who prophesied things like the establishment of the church, the birthplace of the Messiah. Those are two, legacy things I would include in what I would consider his legacy. He prophesied during the reigns of Jotham and Ahaz and Hezekiah. He was a contemporary, according to some timelines, I guess, which vary, maybe of Hosea. Also seems to have been of Isaiah. He has a prophecy that is very, very, very much akin to Isaiah's prophecy of the beginning of the church, the establishment of the church, the kingdom of God. So it's Isaiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, and then Micah chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. I think, maybe let me double check that. Chapter 4. Isaiah chapter 2, Micah chapter 4, verses 1 through 5 are not identical, but they are very, very similar. Not that there's nothing really to take from that one of them copied, nothing like that. It's just came from the same Spirit, and the prophecies are of the same thing. Maybe Micah 5:2 is the real trademark of Micah's prophecy as far as at this point, because it is the birthplace of the Christ, where Bethlehem is specified. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. So the birthplace of the Messiah is also prophesied. He is called here the man of strong convictions, according to the author of the book here, which I guess you could say is true of all prophets. Yep.
I have a question.
I hope it's not about Micaiah and the VL.
Yes. What is the VL?
I don't know. I just took that straight from the book. He said that. I've never seen that abbreviation. I don't know if it's obviously some sort of version. Yeah, that was going to be my guess, but I've never heard it called that. It's usually the other way around. So, but that would be my guess. So I've seen lots of abbreviations. That one was new to me, and then I forgot to Google it and see what came up. Also, I tried to determine if he was saying that he believes that Micah and Micaiah are the same, because there is a prophet named Micaiah that we read about that I thought about including in here, but I didn't. I'm trying to be a little more selective. But I could not find anything that would that would suggest that is a thing that people think, that Micaiah is Micah. But their names are pretty much the same. In fact, Micah and Michal, they're the same, as we'll see. They both mean who is like Jehovah, which is probably meant to be a question, not a he is like you are like Jehovah, Micah, who is like Jehovah, but a question, a rhetorical question, who is like Jehovah? And the answer being no one, obviously. Yeah.
Is this the same Micah that's referenced in Judges?
No, it wouldn't be Judges.
No, the one that took the ephod and built a shrine, and then he
Couldn't have been in Judges because that's too long ago. Too many years.
Okay.
It seems, the Micah that's mentioned in Jeremiah. So Micah, let me get my dates here. Somewhere between around 735 to 710 BC. Judges would have been like 300 or so years before that. Yes, sir.
This says that DL will stand for Vulgate Latin. Other places say it will stand for Leviticus, but that wouldn't make that much sense.
Yeah, me either. So that's what I thought, maybe the Vulgate. Unless my memory is totally failing me, I've always read that the other way around, the Latin Vulgate. But so there you go. Thank you very much for the confirmation. I guess he means in every place it's spelled in this way, in that Latin version or whatever. So his name, who is like Jehovah? No one is like Jehovah, and that is the point of that name. That is the significance of the meaning of the name. There is no one like Jehovah, if it's meant to be a rhetorical question like that, which makes more sense to me. So Micah, like many prophets, was probably of not, high-born royalty. I've made the distinction in the past, Daniel and Ezekiel were contemporaries. Their ministries almost go side by side. In the captivity era, the main difference being Daniel was prophesying to royalty in the capital city of the Persians, or the Babylonians and then the Persians, whereas Ezekiel was out in the field, so to speak, prophesying to the people of Israel, the Hebrews, out in the country. Micah and Isaiah are very similar to that. So they go along the same, side by side, more or less. But Isaiah was more in Daniel's position. Of course, this is before the captivity. Daniel's position of being among the royalty. He's in the king's presence and so on. Whereas Micah is more with the people, out in the people, which would sort of explain why he and Isaiah both have the same sort of prophecy and message about the establishment of the kingdom, because their audience was two different groups. They're both to the Hebrews, but in this case, it's the big, important, powerful people in the case of Isaiah, and in the case of Micah, the more humble, lowly, normal people, common folk, like you and me. So, not really a whole lot to say about the man himself, because we don't know a whole lot about him other than where he was from, which seems to be, if we can be certain that of where it is, in Gath. Probably, it's not known for sure, but anybody know anything about Gath? Insert map here. Note to self, if I ever make a time machine, I can go back and put a map here for you. Anybody can tell me a single thing about Gath? Goliath. Okay, there's a word. Goliath. Anybody know anything about Goliath? He's a Philistine. Yeah, he was big. He was a big Philistine, which means he wasn't an Israelite. So if this is where Micah was from, kind of interesting for that. I mean, that is an interesting aspect of Micah that, isn't the case with most others. But at any rate, since it's not 100%, it's hard to say. What's that?
I mean, it's after the dispersion, so not everybody came back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this would be before, I think, before the kingdom was taken over. I mean, came to an end. As far as Judah, because they're still there. I mean, depending on the timeline, the northern kingdom may have fallen during Micah's ministry, but the southern kingdom was still there. Because that's who he's. That's kind of where his ministry took place in Judah and Isaiah as well. So if you wanted to summarize his prophecy, judgment, chapters 1 through 3, comfort, chapters 4 and 5, salvation, chapters 6 and 7. So there's Micah right there, 7 chapters. But judgment is coming, but there also will be comfort. And that's the portion where the prophecy of the church is found. And then chapter 5, of course, like we said, the ruler that's going to be born in Bethlehem. So it's not all doom. There is still, talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, that is still coming, and it will be fulfilled in Christ. And salvation goes right along with that. I say Micah 5:2 is probably the most famous and memorable thing, in my opinion, one of the most powerful prophecies of Micah, or verses in Micah is one of those sermons. It's its own sermon. It's a pre-made sermon in a skeletal form. It's Micah 6:8. He has told you, O man, what is good, and what, he being God, and what does Jehovah require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. There's one of those sermon verses. Boom, boom, boom. There's your 3 points. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. But especially that first part. God has told man what is good. Want to know what's good? Everybody has their own version and definition of what good is. Is this thing good? Is this thing that this person did good? Is this good? Is it good? And some people would say, yeah, I think that's a good thing. It's for the greater good. It may not be a pleasant thing, but it's good because of this. Somebody else might say, no, I don't think that's good. It's very bad. Well, there is still a thing as objective good, and it only comes from God. God has told you, oh man, what is good. So, what is good? Whatever God says is good. It's the verse right before that where Micah says, will Jehovah be pleased with thousands of rams? This is sort of him quoting with sarcasm almost. With what shall I come before Jehovah and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with the calves a year old? Will Jehovah be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? He's putting words into the mouths of the people and their attitude. God's never satisfied. What does he want, 1,000 rams? Will that be good enough? And that's where he says, no, he has told you, oh man, what is good, what he wants. Do good, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. It's not about the sacrifices unto themselves. I would encourage a personal study of the minor prophets. From my experience, they're neglected, but there are some powerful things in there that are really worthy of. It's just those little gems. That's kind of how the Scriptures are. It's all a big gem, but there's also little gems in the big gems. Little gems in the big gem. Yeah. Little sparkles, little flickers, little flecks in the big gem of the Scriptures. Okay. Just so we don't run short on time, which I've never said. Michal. It's probably not how her name is meant to be pronounced, but there's no way on earth I'm saying it the way it probably is pronounced, for your sake as much as mine. But that's what we're going to call her. Same name, basically, feminine form, I guess, of the same name as Micah, who is like Jehovah. She was the younger daughter of King Saul, who became David's first wife, but was ultimately cursed, so to speak, for her unjust disdain and open disrespect of her husband, the king, David. Her story is interesting. It's a very strange, you talk about character arcs, and things, and the journey that a character might go on. Michal's is very interesting. We don't get to follow her every step, but here's how it goes. And just spoiler alert, as I put, or as the handout, the book says, she does not have a very great character. Michal. Still, no thanks. Yeah, I'm sure that's wrong too. If you said it the way they probably said it, probably got to get that you got to get that in there. Yeah. And I don't even want to listen to somebody do that for however long. So every time I said her name, if I did that, yeah, you wouldn't hear anything else but for the rest of the day. That's all you would be able to hear. She's not very. It's not flattering to her, on her, because she doesn't seem to be that great of a woman, I'll say. And I don't want to. I want to give benefit of the doubt where it is appropriate, but also there are some glaring issues with some of the things that we read about. She was a princess. I don't know how much princess and prince, how that applied and translated in Hebrew culture during the time of the monarchy. It may not have been as much as some royal systems, but she was, if the daughter of the king is a princess, then she was a princess. But her character was not all that commendable. She's been described here as having the desire for prestige, fervor of infatuation, indifference to holiness, and idolatry being some of her traits. Persevering in idolatrous practices. But here's the thing. We meet her. How do we meet her? 1 Samuel 18. Let me go ahead and bring up chapters again, okay? I did it this morning. I'll do it again. I mentioned Matthew 4. That's the temptation chapter of Jesus. Hebrews 11, Hall of Faith. 1 Samuel 17. Anybody? Anybody know? You're going to know after this. Wes said the word a second ago. No, before big. Before Philistines. One thing about Gath. What was it? There you go. Okay. 1 Samuel 17, Goliath. There you go. That's where David kills Goliath. 1 Samuel 18, we meet Jonathan, or at least his connection with David. But then we meet Michal. And what does it say about Michal when we first meet her? 1 Samuel 18, verse 20. She loved David. Now, cut her some slack, okay? Everybody loved David. So there's number one. Just go back a few verses. The women sang to one another as they celebrated. Saul struck down his thousands, David his 10,000s. Everybody loved David. He was the hero. He killed Goliath, the Philistine. But also, remember, David was pretty good looking, apparently. So, kind of like it says here, the book said, what young woman wouldn't be attracted by such a strong, athletic young man who was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome? So that's how we're introduced to Michal. She loved David. Now, remember, Saul had promised, whoever kills Goliath, I'll give him my eldest daughter, which was not her. But guess what? He didn't do it. David killed Goliath. He didn't give his daughter. But later, he finds out that his other daughter, or at least one of his other daughters, loved David. And he thought, hey, here's my opportunity. I can get him killed. That's all he saw there was an opportunity to get David killed. So he found out she loved David. David was probably, he got ripped off. He got cheated. He should have been the king's son-in-law. He got cheated of that. Finds out Michal, his other daughter, younger daughter, loves David. So he's like, hey, I'll give you another chance to be the king's son-in-law. David was still a little resistant, but he said, all I want is this, 104 skins of the Philistines. He thought, surely, he ain't coming out of this alive. Well, he did. He brought him 200. And then, so, Michal and David are married. Do you have something?
Yeah, I think it's a little unfair to say that Michal loved him for...
Vain reasons?
Yes. Because
I didn't mean to say that if I did. Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a good catch.
Talk about the character, though.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very first verse of chapter 18 says that Jonathan's soul was knit to David.
Yeah. So maybe Michal's was the same reasons?
Well, she did save him.
She did say his life.
So here's the thing. This is one of those things we're not told. We're given a little more detail as to why Jonathan, not explicitly, but we get the impression, we can see, first of all, we get to know Jonathan, the kind of man he was, and how he saw good in David. I mean, he was a good, godly man. David was a good, godly man, and they just meshed well. Well, we're not told why Michal loved David. We're just told that she did. So it could be for all the right reasons. Could be for all the wrong reasons. Could be for all the reasons. We just don't know. I didn't mean to imply that she loved him only because of those things or any other thing. Something drew her to him. And maybe it was because she saw in him power and rising power. But it also could have been for the reasons that Jonathan loved David, because of his godly character. I don't know if that plays out as we go through this on this journey with her. There's just some strange things, strange turns of events. Okay, so they get married. We all know Saul wants to kill David. He goes through this. He keeps trying to kill David. Finally, at least one of the times, when he threw the spear and everything, David had to leave. He ran off. And what's that?
She told him to escape, like I said.
Yeah, he goes home. Saul puts guards around the house and says that when he comes out in the morning, kill him. But Michal saved him. Okay? So we'll give her this. Now, she may have just been doing this to spite her dad, for all we know. But look how this plays out. Let me just put it this way. There are more honorable ways she could have done this. I'll just put that out there. She takes an image. Interesting word there. Anybody's version say something different? This is 1 Samuel 19:13. Household God. What in the world is Michal doing with a household God in her house? Well,
A tariff
I guess it would depend on the, what it,
were married, but, I mean, that's, I don't know, just all.
Well, she was raised, obviously, worshiping that way, I guess.
well, why?
She was also raised as the king's daughter. And even though it tells us early on, she loved David, at no point do we find out that David returned that affection. David looked at her as a prize of war and somebody who could be bartered for.
I don't know about that.
I think it was a possession, that's what he said. He goes, I earned her by doing this. Now go.
Well, that's just a fact.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
We'll get there. We'll get to that.
well, I'm just saying, no, I don't.
We already talked about David, so we can't throw him under the bus now.
I'm
So
just
you're
saying,
saying, whatever it was though, she put something in the bed.
Yeah, she put this. Well, first of all, it was a god, a teraphim, a household god. That already is a red flag. Why is that in that? Why does she have that? Why do they even have that in their house? Anyway,
But Rachel,
well, yeah, but Rachel came from different situation entirely, but in different time period. Still just as wrong, but it's weird to read this being there.
from the household both times, is what I was just saying.
Yeah. So she puts this, apparently it was big enough to be mistaken for a person. She puts it in the bed, puts some hair on it. David's sick or whatever. It's supposed to look like him. She says he's sick. But really she let him out through the window already and he escaped. But when Saul finds out about it, Michal says, David said he's going to kill me if I don't let him escape. Already weird. That's strange. That's a weird choice.
Probably save her own life.
Maybe, but that's a lie, obviously. I mean, we assume it definitely seems to have been a lie, that she made that up.
Was Saul's character, though, it would seem feasible that he would have killed her?
I don't know, but again, if he killed her, but why lie? She already lied to him, tricked him, his messengers at least. Now she's made this up about the man that she supposedly loves. That I had to, he came in here and he said he's going to kill me.
And she knew he didn't deserve, like he was innocent.
Yeah, he was innocent.
Wrongdoing, so
So it's just she's very intriguing. Because we can't get inside her head. So what was her motive for letting David escape? If she's then going to turn and say it's kind of like,
she was scared of her dad the whole,
yeah, I mean probably so, but she should also be scared of God
I know, but she
even more.
wasn't.
she had a household god. She didn't worship the same God.
It seems that way. Yeah, obviously. So she does deliver David, but also we don't see her for a while. I've got marked in my Bible that when David gets let out that window, that begins for him about a 5 to 10 year exile. He's going on. I mean, he's on the run from his father-in-law. We don't see Michal again until chapter 25. And this is what it says. Verse 44. Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was of Galem. In other words, Saul decides he's just giving his daughter to some other man. She's already married. This is illegal, for one thing. I mean, it's against the law. The law. I guess, yeah. I mean, there's very little she can do in a sense. But we just read that at the end of chapter 25, just as a passing thought. Okay, so she has now been given to this other man to be his wife. She's David's wife. Saul had no right to do that. The reason David is gone is his fault. All of it's his fault. But I guess just to spite David or whatever, he's going to take advantage of this again. And she's given So it doesn't really say much about her, but still, this was an illegitimate union, should have never happened, is wrong.
But it does seem like David cares about her enough to give it back.
I believe so.
Because it says around like she's
Just
During these reigns,
he went and got her back.
is that when David acquired Abigail and other wives? And so when he went back for Michal, it was because he was due her. Not
which is true, still true.
But what I'm saying is he obviously seemed to love some of the others. And in other words, I don't see any affection from David.
But to be fair, you don't see any affection on David's part for the other women either.
We don't get to see much of it at all.
Well, Abigail was pretty.
Okay, well,
Obviously Bathsheba was quote unquote the love of his life, but
so we can accuse the men of being vain, but we have to give the women the benefit of the doubt.
women had no control.
Okay, so David just liked them because they were pretty, but she loved David because he was a good man. Yeah.
Abigail was a good woman. She was wise enough to keep David from sinning.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, she wasn't doing something counter to the culture, even the Jewish culture, because Saul, as father, had
Yeah, I don't know how we're not given the details of how exactly they played it off and dealt with the elephant in the room, which would have been, hey, hello, she's already married. You already married her to David. But
we have in scriptures that the ignorance of these times got wind.
yeah,
For some reason, and often he used that in furthering multiple wives.
yeah,
So I think from our cultural perspective, we could put aspersions on that might be more accurate than necessarily the culture of their time.
yeah. There were plenty of not so ideal things that went on, polygamy being one of them. And if anybody can find any good thing that happened because of polygamy, let me know what it was, because I've yet to find any. There are good things that happened in spite of it, but not because of it, I guess you could say, but that's the most you could say. But here's another thing, let me throw this in here about her new husband. We don't know how much he knew. For all he knew, I mean, this could have been passed over as she's not married at all, and I'm giving you my virgin daughter that or whatever could have been. We just don't know. It's one of the saddest images in Scripture when we get to 2 Samuel 3 that David, now Saul's been killed. David has a condition. His only condition is give me my wife back. Saul's son Ishbosheth, give me my wife, Michal. And he does. He gets her back. So then it says Ishbosheth sent, this is 2 Samuel 3:15, sent and took her from her husband Paltiel, or Palti, depending on, it's spelled differently in different places. But it says he went with her weeping after her. So they go and get her to take her home, but this poor man, I don't want to, to me it seems like a poor man, he's following them down the road, weeping. It's like he didn't ask for this, to get dragged into this mess.
How long do you think they had been, quote unquote, married? What was the timeline that she was his wife?
I think a timeline's difficult because the only time it's mentioned in 1 Samuel 25:44, it says that it records it as something that's already happened. So we don't know when he did it. But even if it did say at this time he gave, it's still hazy, how many years are passing here in between all this.
There's been some time that has passed. And I find it interesting that he refers to this guy as her husband. Whereas, in the New Testament, with the woman at the well, it's like you have had 5 husbands, and the one you were with is not your husband. Knowing
Yeah.
for these men.
Well, he obviously cared about her.
The one thing that's for sure, it seems to me,
So she mentioned my mom in that.
he cared about her. Now maybe it's because I guess we could just put motives in his lap too and say, well, he was the king's son-in-law and he just didn't want to lose his status. I don't see that at all. I would see anger in that. He followed them angry, but this is a broken man. And all Abner says is, go home. Go, return, shoo, like he's a bug or something. Go on. And he goes. He goes home. And that's the end of him. But I think it's worthy of note, as the book here points out, we do not read of Michal weeping as she left. Just saying. But anyway, the real turn of events with Michal and David's story takes place in 2 Samuel 6, because this is where it all falls apart. Now, the last thing we read about Michal takes place whenever the ark has been brought back to Jerusalem. Remember, Uzzah touched the ark. They were transporting it, touched it, struck dead. David was mourning. What in the world's going on? But then he realized, we've been doing this all wrong. They get it right. And now the ark has finally been brought to the capital, Jerusalem. And David is thrilled. He's overcome with joy and thanksgiving. One of the strangest verses you'll ever read, 2 Samuel 6:14, David danced before Jehovah with all his might. I would like to know what that looked like, but I don't. I know what it would look like if I danced before Jehovah with all my might, and it ain't pretty. And he was wearing a linen ephod, okay? So, tuck that in the back of your mind, because now, progress forward a little bit. In verse 16 it says, as the ark of Jehovah came into the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before Jehovah. And she despised him in her heart. Were they estranged for a while? Yeah. Has David changed much at this point? No.
What's a linen ephod? This says,
I've got...
the usual habit of priests and Levites, what this says.
Okay, so I didn't check my own cross-reference, but I'm going to check it now, since you asked. 1 Chronicles 15:27.
Because if it's the habit of a priest or Levite, then it wouldn't be something inappropriate, and her response to it is like it was inappropriate.
Well, I don't think so. That's not what I make of this. She saw him dancing in the way, whatever he was doing. And she did not find it endearing. She did not find it attractive. She did not find it any of those kinds of things. She did not find it funny. Yeah, she found it disgusting based on her scathing words. So going down a few more verses, it says, David returned to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants, his servants, female servants, as one of the vulgar fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. Now, what I see in this, first of all, note the sarcasm, scathing sarcasm. How the king honored himself today. Total sarcasm. But it's like you didn't look very kingly out there today. It was beneath her. Shameful in her eyes. Disgraceful in her eyes. Remember, we're dealing with a princess here. Royal princess.
See, I see her embittered. Somebody who, obviously, if she was the light of this Paltiel's life or whatever, and now she's just one among many. And then she looks out and it's like, and he's real happy, and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
So if she's embittered,
But it's directed at David, though. She saw him and she despised him in her heart.
that's because she was embittered to him.
Yeah, she's wrong. The thing is, what has David done to? What do you mean?
He took her from a guy who obviously adored her, put her in amongst all the others.
I don't know.
Wasn't supposed to be given to that guy.
This doesn't. Okay, if that was the case, then she would have despised him in her heart whenever he took her. She looked out and saw him dancing and leaping before Jehovah, and she despised him in her heart. Something has changed. And it's not David, and there's no indication that it was the fact that he took other wives either, because unfortunately that was pretty normal in that time. It was something to do with David.
But if she,
I mean,
if she was justified in it, then she wouldn't have been punished. So we know by God's
yeah, she was totally in the wrong. Now, the question remains, did she do this in front of people? Because it could go either way. It says that she came out to meet him. So it was at least somewhat public, because she came outside and did it outside in the open. But depending on how many people saw this, would have made it all the worse. Because yes, he's the king, but he's also her husband. And he hadn't done anything wrong. Everything that he was doing was out of love for God. And so that's what he says. It was before Jehovah, who chose me above your father and above all his house, to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of Jehovah, and I will celebrate before Jehovah. And I love this part. He says, I will make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in your eyes. But by the female servants of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor. You see, this is a Michal problem. The very thing that she despised, these other women, in his words, honored. What gives here? It seems that she did not value the same things David valued. She could have seen this and thought, boy, he sure does love Jehovah. But she saw this and said, boy, this man is repulsive to me. This is not the man that I thought I married. And at no fault of his own. He's still the same David. At least at this point. And I think he remained the same David pretty much for his entire life, imperfections and all. But Michal has totally turned against him. And here's the last word about her. Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. Now, that could be a couple of things. That God did that? Could be. Or, there is a man who has the control in whether or not his wife ever has a child. And in her case, it's David. Because, we get it. So, this seems to have been the end of the union of David and Michal in practicality. They did not recover from this. She never came. We don't hear anything about what about an apology? Michal, humbling herself and saying, that was out of line. You're right. And all of it, I take it back. But no, she seems to have taken this to her grave. Because this is the last word. She had no child, which, by the way, would also, the language there would seem also to include that other guy. Had no children with him. However long they may have been together. And if they didn't have any children, that would seem to suggest they probably weren't together very long. But anyway, she had no child till the day of her death, all the way up to for the rest of her life, or for at all. It seems it seems to me it means she never had a child. Why? Well, because of this. Yes, sir. Yeah, there would have been. Yeah. It was just, like I said, she's just totally out of line. It was inappropriate. Notwithstanding the fact that David had done nothing wrong, even if he had done something that was questionable, like, come on, is that really okay? She was still out of line to go out there and do it the way what she did, the way she did it. Totally out of line. Disrespectful, period. But whenever you consider, was he really doing anything worthy of that much scorn like that? He was praising, and it was all from the joy of the ark of God is here, and he sets her straight. I mean, he says, if I may paraphrase, like, excuse me, but I wasn't dancing for you. I was dancing for God. And if this is offensive to you, you ain't seen nothing yet. Is kind of what he's, I'm going to make myself even more contemptible in your eyes. Just you wait. And there it is. She had no child, which is, again,
trying to put that in worship. Like they use David, as I've heard people use David sometimes for instruments.
Yeah.
Like David played. We don't really see people really trying to make a big case for dancing for the Lord.
not usually, yeah. But, yeah, and I'm glad, yeah. I'm not, yeah, we're not going to, yeah. No dancing, no need to be dancing with all our might in the worship assembly. We can dance figuratively. Yes. Yeah, there are, get close, yeah. If the Spirit gets them, But again, that's an example of side effects of doctrine, false doctrine creeping in, yeah.
I always taken her or read that where she had 4 children as sort of a manifestation of God.
Yeah.
God said, I hadn't thought.
It's possible.
My husband says, I've done
Yeah, it's either one's possible. So, or both, I guess. I mean, in a way, it could be both. So, whether she became barren, which it doesn't necessarily say, but it could have been a divine judgment from God, or it could have just been that David was done with her. And it seems to me she was done with David. So, David? We're not done with David. Esther, yeah. Yeah, a similar thing, little different, but a similar kind of open disrespect and
Except for it was pointed out at a ladies' day. Vashti was who Xerxes took with him when he went to battle. And it was she that gave him a son that took over the kingship. So Vashti didn't have the same punishment that Michal did.
yeah, different circumstances, different ending in a way.
And also
Yep.
true that Saul didn't have any more descendants.
That is true. Saul did not have any more.
God had a hand, whatever, whether, David put it away completely or not, God had a hand in it, and whether, as we know that at times, that seemed like that was a punishment on the women, that they were barren, because of the fact, they
Yeah, it's hard. It would be hard to repair a relationship at that point if the one in the wrong has no desire whatsoever. Doesn't change. They're fully convinced, and they're wrong. Well, where can you go from there? So, yeah, if Michal had loved David enough, she would have wanted to get his forgiveness, especially after he gave her that little explanation. But she did not. And so, as far as that goes, that's true for all of us. When we do something, when we're out of line, we should seek forgiveness, and especially in a relationship as intimate as husband and wife, or else that's going to create some very difficult times. And for Michal, she may have been so cold and bitter that she was fine with that. Fine, I'll just live the rest of my days alone in my own chambers or whatever, and fine, don't ever come back around. But not the right attitude to have whenever you're in the wrong. We're not talking about standing on the principle of truth. We're talking about a woman who judged a man based on his love for God, basically, just based on her own personal standard. But anyway, we're out of time, past time.